Hello, everyone, and welcome to LoopUpLive. My name is Lee Henderson. I'm the Director of Consulting for Asia Pacific, and I'll be hosting a little roundtable today with Ellen, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm Strategic Operations Director at LoopUp, and I'm looking after our implementation and service delivery team.
Thank you, Ellen. And Zach.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Zach. I'm one of the UC consultants out of the UK.
Excellent. So today we're going to be having a little discussion about proof of concepts, a bit of a proof of concept 101, and really like what our experiences have been and what your experiences could be. So I guess the first logical question that we can lead off with here is, what's a proof of concept? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, a proof of concept to me is something that's really used by an organization that's got a clear blocker. So they want to move to Teams. They're coming from an existing, some type of legacy PBX, but they don't really know the best way to do that. They've never really, they've got some clear blocker. They've never really had access maybe to Teams calling or, what that even looks like from a user point of view.
It can also be around the fear of kind of Teams in itself. They like the concept of it, but want to validate whether it's the right solution for them.
That's very true. I mean, I've seen a number of people do a proof of concept because they're moving from a competing platform like Slack or like Zoom, for example, and they're looking at sort of concentrating everything into a single unified platform, but they're not quite sure if it's really the right fit for them just yet, and they just want to have that little taste test. Following on from that, I mean, the other thing that we would talk about would be a pilot, but that's really a different sort of kettle of fish than a proof of concept, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, especially as a consultant, I have these conversations quite a lot with customers, and it's I want to run a pilot, or well, actually, I want to run a POC, and those words can be used very interchangeably. We always try here at LoopUp and try and keep it as clearly defined differences. A proof of concept is, to me, something that is getting rid of a blocker. So you're going to go into your proof of concept with some clear, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little later, success criterias.
Absolutely.
You're going out with, it's a set period of time, whether that be a week, 3 weeks, 3 months. A proof of concept has this set period of time that you want to kind of prove something out the back of it. Whereas a pilot is, we know we're going with Teams. We know there might be some bumps down the road, but guess what? You guys are the guinea pigs. We're rolling out to you first. That's your pilot compared to that proof of concept.
Yeah, it's very much the early stages of the production, isn't it? Just to get those initial users on, get them using it, then they can almost be the champions.
Absolutely. So when it comes to a proof of concept, I mean, do you guys think it's necessary? Like, Alan, do you believe it's necessary that all customers do it, or is it something that can be skipped if a customer is, I mean, like as Zach just mentioned, if they've already dedicated, should they still consider doing one, even though they've already committed to going to Teams?
Yeah, I think they're very much on a case-by-case basis. Some customers, it makes complete sense if they're trying to test a specific scenario, or like Zach said, there's a specific blocker they're worried about. But if you have customers who are already on the Microsoft journey, they're already moving from, say, Skype for Business, they're used to that sort of desktop client, then it makes sense for them to go straight to Teams. There's no need for them to do that proof of concept stage. So I think it very much depends on the company, but for some, it makes the most sense and will really help them kind of feel confident going down that route.
Fantastic.
I think it's important as well as we're going to go even a level deeper now. Proof of concepts, there could be different types of proof of concepts as well. There is the notion of like a sandbox proof of concept where you're gaining access to Teams that isn't in your Office 365 subscription at all. It's a complete separate environment, and that brings its own benefits and caveats. or you have another type of proof of concept, which is, actually in your tenant. They're the ones that I see have the most valuable to the
Yeah.
customer. Um,
Yeah.
but there's different levels of proof of concepts as well. You can actually run.
Well, the risk I always find with a sandbox environment, like a separate tenant, is that you've got to log out of your existing Teams
Yeah,
account, log into this new temporary Teams account to test the features. And while that might be, it might be attractive from a look, we can see how placing and receiving calls and we can see how that all sort of functions, but it really doesn't. You don't get to soak in it. You don't get to get the proper, correct
Yeah,
experience.
absolutely.
Mm.
yeah,
And also, I think if you've got customers that maybe have external factors at play, you've got an office move or an end of a contract, for example, sometimes those sorts of decisions will force your hand, and proof of concept time may not be necessary or available. So yeah, I think it really just depends.
Absolutely. So when it comes to getting a proof of concept up and running, you've selected a supplier and you've decided that you're going to be going ahead. What are the sort of, the first question that anyone's going to look at is, well, what's it going to cost me?
yeah. There's obviously some cost implications to a proof of concept. It does really depend on which provider you choose. Some will, waive POC costs or pass those if you go into a production rollout, something like that. Um, But the one thing to always bear in mind is a licensing cost.
Mm,
So if you're an organization that's utilizing E5, then this may not be so much of an issue because you already have the big thing, which is the phone system license, already
yeah.
bundled into your subscription cost. But for the majority of customers that, especially I speak to, it's a mixture of E3 plus that add-on license. So it's always good to be very clear and upfront around cost and make sure um, there is going to be some sort of licensing cost assigned to this proof of concept.
Well, it depends though. There are some, depending on the size of the organization and the relationship they have with Microsoft, they might be able to via their EA get access to a trial of the phone system SKUs for a short period of time. Or what's most likely is a trial pack of 10, 20 E5s that
Yeah.
will give them, they'll get 30 days or 60 days or something to that effect. So that might be another way to keep that cost low. Um, and yeah, as you said before, like depending on the supplier, there might be calling costs, there might not be. It's it's something to flesh out with your service provider when you're looking at moving forward.
Yeah. I can
And I
tell.
think
Oh, sorry, go on, Lee.
no, go ahead.
For probably one thing that Ellen, you've probably come across quite a lot being on the project delivery side, is actually numbers during a POC.
Mm.
Do you find that customers want to bring their own numbers into a proof of concept, or are they kind of happy? Give me some temporary ones, and then I'll just use those for that. Where do you see the kind of camp sitting on that?
I think the majority of people understand it's proof of concept and they're happy with test numbers. There's definitely a couple of occasions where we've seen people want to port numbers in for proof of concept, which um, to a certain extent makes the transition to production a lot easier because you've done a lot of the difficult steps,
Yeah,
and then they get to really test it out as a proof of concept. But I mean, that's borderline moving into the pilot type of scenario then. Um, and we also see some customers that are happy to take new numbers, but perhaps put forwards on to from their existing numbers. So they'll be receiving their old calls through their old numbers through Teams, so they actually get to kind of use it day in day out rather than just use it for dummy test calls.
Mm. Definitely makes things a lot simpler when you've got that number that you're used to receiving calls on following you around, even if it's just via a forward. It makes it so much better.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you do bring someone across for a proof of concept, Alan, when you're helping to shape that proof of concept project, um, Zach mentioned earlier that there were success criteria. and I tend to agree they're a very important thing. What are the most common ones that you tend to get asked to, or what are the most common criteria that you tend to see around a proof of concept?
Um, Obviously, I'm going to say it depends because every customer is slightly different. I feel like I've said that to every
True.
answer. But I think some of the key ones are typically network. I think people have a worry or concern that moving from kind of a traditional ISDN circuit telephony system to a SIP-based system, they're worried that their network's not up to scratch.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really important one because effectively that's kind of the quality of the phone calls is the most important thing. So there's a lot we can do with customers to make sure that they're comfortable with that. A lot of network assessments, that sort of thing. And as consultants, you guys know that that sort of work is done up front to make sure they're happy with it prior to going ahead. So I
Absolutely.
definitely think network readiness is a big element. And then I think also just teams, the users themselves being comfortable with teams. So I think we're going to probably come on to the different types of users that you can have in a proof of concept. But I think a big success criteria is the business agreeing that it's right for them.
That user adoption piece I've found is one of a key success criteria, especially for my customers. I can do a demo, to all the decision makers 50 times, but it's really when the receptionist kind of gets that in
Yeah.
her hands and is actually transferring calls. That's
Mhm.
when all these potentially, processes or ways of working throughout the business are really going to come out of the woodwork. And I didn't even know we did it like that, and then
Yeah.
that's but another thing that I always hear as well is around call quality, around success criteria. Of course, in our specific example, it's a direct routing as a service, so it's people
Mhm.
coming on to our service, so they want to test the quality. I do find though call quality, it's kind of hard to pinpoint around that. Do you make one call? Do you make 1,000 calls over your testing period? So it's how you can gate that call quality and how you can kind of put a quantifiable number. Um, we use some of the tools such as the call quality dashboard. We spend quite a bit of time during proof of concepts with customers, filling that information out, filling out the reporting labels, and the building data inside of Teams if it's not there already, because
Absolutely.
that's where you can really get that key call quality information directly from calls. Yeah.
And one of the other ways that I find is really good is, I mean, that definitely gives you a good way of tracking the overall network metrics of calls and the overall, technical quality of the call. On top of that, I find that the uh, rate your call information is really valuable. There are ways that you can tune that to turn it up a little bit, and you have to be very careful. I mean, you've got to be very careful to communicate with the proof of concept staff that, hey, this is going to be turned on at a higher level than you would normally see, because we need to know how it feels to you whilst you're using it. We need to know that this is like, and that just gives you another, like, more human metric as to how it's going. But either way, I'd recommend, like, during a project, that call quality check and the rate my call check. I recommend that you have check-ins during the proof of concept
Oh,
at regular intervals.
most definitely. We at LoopUp, just to say, what we would do. We have like a weekly check in with a customer, but we always hard date like a midpoint of a proof of concept. Let's say you're running, a 2-month proof of concept. At the end of month one, there is already, from the start of the project, there is already a date, but we're going to meet, to talk about what has happened. Because one of the big things as well is um, to hit your success criteria, it's got to be used. So
Yes.
how do you do that? We offer UAT or user acceptance testing plans, already pre-built, that customers could kind of slice and dice whichever way they want and pull out the information they need. Um,
Mm.
But it's making sure that you have a little bit of commitment from the customer side as well to say, yes, we're gonna spend an hour a week and go through this test plan, and that's really valuable to actually get you to hit those. Because there's no point looking at call quality if there's over 1 month period 3 calls gone through.
Yes,
Because you need that
absolutely,
data going through the system.
absolutely. Take away the telephones on their desk when you start.
Yeah.
Force the change.
Well, I mean, look, you kind of have to, because if you are still going, all right, well, I'll just not use that today because I'm comfortable with using my old phone. You really are sort of defeating the purpose of doing the trial, right? You're not getting the most out of it. You need to get that experience in the data so that you know whether or not those success criteria have been met. But that sort of brings us to the users and how they're going to use the product and how they're going to be engaged, because in my experience there are different types of users that you'll see, and it's always been a very easily it's been a tempting thing to just say, look, we'll just plug it in for the IT staff and that'll be a great proof of concept, right? But in experience, I mean, how would you say your experience has been if that's been the case?
I mean, the IT staff are the ones who usually want the change, so they're all up for it. They're happy to try it. They can be the real power users, and that's great because you do need people to really stress test a system to make sure that it works as expected. But they're the ones that are going to be happy when we move into production. It's the receptionist, it's maybe the more nervous users that I think is really important to get involved in a POC, because if they feel like they're involved in the decision making, the testing process to kind of make sure it suits their needs, the chances of a proof of concept being successful is a lot higher.
Most
Absolutely.
definitely. I think it's actually, because the users all come into camps of users. It's best to try and sprinkle in different types of those camps of users. Like you say, you've got your IT users, or particular people in the business, like your team's champions. So these are the ones that are like, I've heard you can call in Teams. Why have we not got that? They're the ones that are putting tickets in, going, my mate at another business can make calls. Why can't they? They're the people that you want in there pushing, your team's deployment.
And we'll spread that word around people that they talk to. Hey, I can do this. It's great. And it just kind of shares that good news story.
And I often find that they're the most valuable allies when you do move to production and you go, okay, good news, we're doing it. They're the ones to identify and go, okay, this person really loves Teams. They love calling in Teams and they know how it all works. And they're the prime person to sort of, help and osmose the information and osmose how to use the platform out to the other people within the business. But I tell you what, I also love plopping in a couple of those users that people say they're really, they love their desk phone. They're probably not going to want to change. I really like getting those users on and giving them hypercare to make sure that you can help to bring them into the journey as well and give them an idea of what calling with Teams is like as hey, it's actually really simple. Just get your mobile phone and you'll be able to make phone calls and everything will be great. And it really does help to identify, okay, well, what are the blockers that we may see from other people in the business that we now need to go, okay, well, we can tune how we're going to roll out, how we're going to train based on a few of the difficult customers that we may have or difficult users that we may have in the business.
But one of my favorite things is, especially when you're brought in for a proof of concept or something, and you're dealing with the IT or the decision makers in that business, and they're like, "Huh, you're not going to like our receptionist staff, for example, or you're not going to like this group of people," and you're like, "Okay, well, let's bring them into the." Oh no, that's not going to work. But then you like Lee mentioned, that hypercare. You sit with that one particular person. You give them 30 minutes. You give them a little bit of solid time, and you switch them from that blocked user into a team's champion, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is
Yes.
great! Like this is
Yes.
exactly what I need." I had to hang up the phone and press 3 buttons before I could do something. But now I could just walk away with my,
9 before I
my
dial
desk
out.
phone. And
Yes.
exactly, things like that.
Mm,
It's so much simpler now, and it's so much more feature rich that
absolutely.
I think it's just that small fear of change. But as soon as you get over that, then the features will speak for themselves.
And we're giving receptionists a bad rep here. It's definitely not all receptionists.
No, they're receptionists. In my experience, receptionists are generally the backbone of how a phone system or Teams is received. They really kind of make or break. I always give them
And they
a
are the
very good
heaviest
amount of
users, so
care.
they have to be comfortable with it.
Certainly, absolutely. So based on those sort of users that we've talked about and the success criterion that we've talked about earlier, are there any sort of common issues that we would look out for during a proof of concept, and things that would trip us up and make the proof of concept not very successful?
One that comes to mind for me specifically is we mentioned it a little bit previously, but it's that user adoption piece. I've
Mm,
had some conversations with customers where it's like, you know, um, I'll they'll find these guys will they'll just pick it up, and it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then you get into a proof of concept, and it's question after question after question. So and it's kind of birthed a user adoption piece to then go into production. Whether that be just flyers going around or preset videos that's been put up into the SharePoint somewhere, just so there's some sort of resource um, that users can then go back to, rather than uh, not reaching out to IT or, uh, God forbid, just not using the platform just because they don't know what to do, they don't know how to use it. So
yeah.
that's kind of one common issue that we ran into, and then overcame because of the proof of concept itself. It got picked up before we actually rolled out into production.
Mhm.
Yeah, we really need the business to buy in, I think, and give the proof of concept a good go. Otherwise, it will inevitably not be a success if they're just not giving it the time of day that it really needs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that I find that identifying your it's the classic change management sort of layout, identifying a sponsor that's going to lead it, with a future rather than feature approach. Instead of
Absolutely.
saying, well, here are all the features you get, lead it more of a, we're
Business
looking at
benefits.
building this exactly. It's going to be cheaper for the business. It's going to be better for the business. Having that leader talking about it from that point of view, I find that really does help with engagement.
And also at an
Um,
individual level, like this specific team will benefit because of X, and you're going to get a lot more buy-in from those users if they understand how their day-to-day is going to be improved from using Teams.
Definitely. Definitely. Hey, we can all work from home a little bit more. Makes it a lot easier. Wouldn't that be great? um, what happens when you get a proof of concept that doesn't, when it reveals a problem that's you weren't expecting, i.e., that you do have some network connectivity issues? Because real time voice is, it's relatively sensitive to poor network. So if you've got a poor network connection on site, I mean, would that be something that we'd look to fix as part of the proof of concept?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've we obviously try, if we do come across any sort of network quality or issues, it's definitely one of the big things is identifying that fully. Is it
Mm,
that particular user issue? Is it that site? Is it more of a widespread thing across the organization? Um, we always try and get ahead of these types of conversations by running network assessment workshops with a customer. So this is where we'll dedicate, as a consultant, some specific time with the customer to walk through Microsoft's best practices. So we're not kind of touting, to use this, you must follow, our particular, network protocols. We're kind of leaning on Microsoft for that quite a lot,
mhm,
because it's their platform at the end of the day, being Teams.
mm,
So we really talk around their best practices, and These types of workshops, bringing out certain things like VPNs, making sure that they are, split tunnel, or you're not tunneling all your traffic through a VPN, or you're bypassing certain, Microsoft 365 traffic outside of that. Um, to be honest, because we run our proof of concepts that way and we get those conversations out right at the front, I don't come into a lot of issues around, um, you know, during a proof of concept. Oh no, it's just not working. Like, what do we do next?
If you've planned your steps correctly, and like we've talked about planning your adoption, we've talked about planning your deployment. As long as you plan that network and know what you're up against, you shouldn't be surprised. And the same goes about using the call quality dashboard, right? You'll be able to analyze and say, all right, well, we've detected a poor quality call. It's on a poor quality network. Where is it? Okay, well, I can see that that's not within the business. It's a Starbucks, or it's something that we have no control over. And in that case, okay, well, please try and use a better quality Wi-Fi connection next time that you're trying to make a phone call, as opposed to, oh, well, Teams is terrible. We can drill down to that and say, all right, well, yes, it is network, but it's network we can't control and can't correct. So I'm aware that we're getting a little tight for time. So maybe we can have a little chat about, all right, well, let's say we've planned our proof of concept. We've engaged all the right people. We've got the right solution so that our users are using it in anger. When we get to the tail end and we've decided, okay, well, we've decided that Teams is actually good and it is actually a great phone system. What's the next step from there?
I mean, the nice thing is a lot of the hard work's done. So for us, transitioning from a proof of concept to production is a really nice project, because the customers bought in, a lot of the legwork's done, the team's environment's configured, and it's just a case of deciding what the next step's going to be around numbers. So if they've already ported the numbers in as part of the proof of concept, great. That literally is a case of let's just roll it out to the users. If they haven't and they took the new numbers as kind of test numbers from us, then it's just a case of working out kind of a porting schedule, site-by-site migration, and just understanding how and when they want to enable users for go live. But in terms of the actual technical setup, the proof of concept does a lot of that for us.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is choosing the right provider for a proof of concept. Making sure that, excuse me, you're going on to a full production environment. You're not being gated by that provider as well. Going on to, so you're in a proof of concept. Here's our proof of concept environment.
Yes,
Making
definitely.
sure that's something that we do at LoopUp, where you go into our full network, straight onto our code, just so when we flip from proof of concept, when we've looked at those success criteria and we've gone call quality tick, user adoption tick, and we've gone through all those at the end. It's a super simple, for all the steps you've just mentioned there, Ellen, smooth transition directly into that production rollout.
There you go. Wonderful. Well, team, thanks for joining me today. And I hope everyone out there has found this useful. And yeah, we look forward to joining you again next time for the next LoopUpLive. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers all.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.